Well, hello everybody. Kathy Lamberti here. So today we are addressing marketing of a brain health studio and the whole concept of how to promote your business from a marketing point of view. We're at a time where brain health has become a very, very big thing, but very few people really understand what brain health is and what movement-based brain health is as opposed to drugs and supplements, etc. I'm going to hand over to you, Rob and Ryan, and over to you.
Great, thank you, Kathy. And we'll get started here. I'm just going to share my screen, pull this up, and get this started. Is everybody seeing that PowerPoint okay?
Looks good.
All right. So we like to call this success begets success. Brain health programming can be your best marketing tool. And I think you're going to see where that title comes from. Success begets success. If we're successful in building wellness and brain health programs, that will attract vibrant residents, which further attracts and sustains a vibrant community. Ryan, do you want to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Ryan. I have a background in exercise science and neuroscience, and I spend a lot of time as a brain health coach talking to individuals about lifestyle factors. And while I run a program that is focused on delivering dual task training and extra-gaming interventions, we talk about a lot of the things that we'll also talk today about. So I think it's helpful to frame brain health as an entire ecosystem and specialty that has many different factors. So I'm very excited for today's presentation.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. I'm Rob Winningham. I've been doing this type of research for well over 30 years. I have a background in neuroscience, cognitive neuroscience, and developed a lot of programs to help improve quality of life, health span for older adults. So this was the kind of the promised agenda that we were going to try to cover today, and I think we were going to be able to hit those goals here. I just want to begin with the idea, and I have a feeling I'm preaching to the choir, but hopefully we'll give you some more ideas so you can convince others that wellness programming is essential. If we are going to maximize older adults' quality of life, their purpose, their meaning, and their health span, we need to have high quality wellness and brain health programming. Investing in these communities in wellness will attract and retain active residents. And I know that's something we think a lot about in the senior living setting. We want to attract the types of residents will further attract residents. And I suspect many of you have been to the communities that we're talking about. I know I have, and many of them have SMARTfit. And I frequently say, this is where I would want to live, right? And that's important. That's an important message to share. Now, I'm going to kind of do an overview on brain health. We're going to highlight a few things such as dual tasking with SmartFit, but kind of give you a list of things that should be in high quality wellness and brain health programs. And for me, I have a hard time separating that because so many wellness activities contribute to brain health and vice versa. But if you get into the research, it usually comes down to executive functioning. That's what a lot of these interventions measure. That is going to be your ability to pay attention, inhibit, problem solve, and reason. And this is important because if we can improve executive functioning with our brain health programs, that improvement will generalize to untrained tasks. In addition, research shows improvements in executive functioning allows people to live more independently longer, higher quality of life, and it can even decrease your chance of falling and extend the time you're safe to drive. So executive functioning really helps us meet our health span goals and our quality of life goals. And here's a list. These are the areas that research shows are controllable in many cases and can lead to improvements in executive functioning. Alcohol consumption, that down there on the bottom of the list, research shows that less alcohol is good. The idea that drinking alcohol for our brain health, our heart health, our cardiovascular health, I think that is very 1990s now. Even a fairly small amount of alcohol can have an impact. The big effect is heavy drinking. That actually leads to a type of dementia. But all of those other things are the things you want to add in to your brain health programming. You want programs to reduce diabetes, engage people socially. But the big ones are physical exercise, cognitive exercise, and dual tasking. And we could spend days talking about all the research here, so I'm going to go fairly quickly, relying a lot on meta-analyses where we take a lot of published studies that are done well, usually randomized controlled double-blind studies, combine the data, and we see what the effects are. So we don't have this one-off study showing the effect we're looking for. You can have a lot of confidence in meta-analyses. We combined data from 44 studies that looked at participants who had mild cognitive impairment and early stage dementia. And what they had found was online cognitive training programs, digital cognitive training programs, led to significant improvements in executive functioning, which is needed to make new memories. And another thing, I've seen this in some of my published research doing these types of interventions. When they combined all the data, there was a significant decrease in depression. Some studies have found that, some studies haven't. We're not 100% sure why, but if we improve the ability to inhibit, that might help people kind of turn off negative or anxious thoughts. So that's probably our best hypothesis there. And not surprisingly, when we look at cognitive training programs, the longer they last, the better the results. And this is actually a former student of mine who's a professor now, Justin Carr. He did a 46 study meta-analysis on the effects of cognitive training and or physical exercise on cognitive abilities. And in this meta-analysis, he found that both treatment modalities, be it cognitive training and or physical exercise interventions, led to significant improvements in executive functioning. And that is kind of where we'll be bringing SMARTfit in, because with SMARTfit, we can do dual tasking. We can do both of those at the same time, the physical and the cognitive. And I think I'm going to hand this over to Ryan for the next couple of slides.
Thanks, Rob. So I think one of the things that people want to know is what are the best things that we can do? And I fully agree with what Rob has shown in that there's a lot of things that benefit cognition and brain health. And we more often have the question of what things do or don't help than rather what can help. Meaning which ones can't help? Well, I think they can all do something, but the question is which ones have the greatest effect sizes. And if the word effect size is new to you, it's usually how much it helps. Usually people use percentages, but in research, we use something called effect sizes. We usually want these effect sizes to be something that's considered statistically significant, and they can have low or weak effects, moderate effects, and strong effects. And when we evaluate the literature, at least in healthy older adults, and the research is a little bit different for those with MCI or Parkinson's or early dementia and different types of dementia, but for healthy older adults, the most evidence-based intervention is not a singular intervention. It's actually a multi-domain lifestyle intervention. This includes not just improving cognition, but also preventing dementia. In a multi-domain lifestyle intervention, as you probably have already heard, is doing more than one thing. And the thing that seems to have the greatest effect size, at least according to 2025 literature of what I've reviewed so far, is combining physical and cognitive training. Now, when we say combining physical and cognitive training, what do we mean by that? We actually can mean 2 or 3 different things. If I exercise throughout the week and separately do some cognitive training interventions, that's mostly what this is talking about. But it's inclusive of also sequential training, where maybe I exercise for 30 minutes and immediately after do some cognitive training. That's called sequential training, but it also includes simultaneous training, which is what we're referring to when we're talking about dual task training and clinical or serious exergaming. Next slide. And so a simultaneous approach, is that better than a sequential approach or a segregated approach by which we're doing them separately throughout the week and not sequentially? All of them find benefit, but research has found in comparing these that a simultaneous training approach seems to achieve superior cognitive outcomes when compared to sequential training or physical training alone, according to a recent meta-analysis. Also, other research has found mechanistically that 12 weeks of simultaneous training improves executive functions and increases the efficiency of the prefrontal cortex as measured by fMRI. Now, I do want to say that doesn't mean that anything that's not simultaneous is bad. Just because something achieves a superior outcome doesn't mean that everything else is not useful. I want to remind you that segregated training and sequential training and simultaneous training and even physical exercise by itself still significantly improves cognition and is really critical for brain health. So even though we have superior cognitive outcomes, we don't want to have a superiority complex for these interventions because sometimes these interventions are not accessible. Sometimes they're not scalable, and hopefully that changes in the near future. But there's many reasons why individuals may not experience simultaneous training. And we're, of course, trying to make strides in equipment and programming and research to train that. But it is important to note that all these different approaches do help, but it is interesting to note that simultaneous seems to be superior. And we put out a study with Asbury just a few weeks ago showing that a dual task training program, which included SMARTfit and other approaches, is not only feasible, meaning it's safe and there's strong adherence by at least 75%, but also that it's been associated with significant cognitive benefits. So what this study did is there was a design of a brain health program that combined SmartFit and other pieces of equipment and softwares. Individuals went through several weeks of training, and on average about 8 to 12 weeks of training, but sometimes as much as 36 sessions of training of about 1 hour over the course of a year. And what we found is that there were significant improvements in their MoCA scores, cognitive scores, and similarly with prior research on exergaming and dual task training, significant improvements in processing speed and in executive functioning. And while this was not a very large study and was not a randomized controlled trial, and there's some other challenges with it, it's the first study to show that a combined approach of dual task training and exergaming interventions is safe, feasible, and can have significant cognitive benefits. And we're looking to doing more research in the near future on that.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. I think that's really helpful. And I just can't stress enough what Ryan was talking about in terms of multi-domain interventions or multifactorial interventions. This is one of the truisms in this research. The more of these interventions that have been associated with executive functioning improvement one does, the better. And it's really nice to see you just got a 2026 update on the sequential training versus the simultaneous, and so that's excellent to have. The other thing that we have seen to some degree in most of these areas is it's largely dose dependent. We generally would use that phrase kind of in the context of pharmaceuticals, but in this sense, there probably is a point where there's too much training can be done, particularly on the physical exercise side. But for most people, they can do more and get greater benefits. The other way to kind of be thinking about everything we're talking about, particularly if you work in the senior living sector, increasingly you need to have these various types of interventions. It's not enough just to have, a floor exercise class. You need to have the programs that have been shown to improve cognition, quality of life, and health span. Your prospective residents will expect this. You will not be competitive if you don't have most of what we're talking about. And I think that's already happening and true. We'll be showing you some statistics that show that's going to become more true in the future. But exercise is a big part of it. So exercise by itself, there's a lot of research on this. This is the area that has the greatest number of publications in this space, in my opinion, is the physical exercise on cognition. Literally hundreds of well-designed studies have been in this area. And I always kind of look back. This study is now 23 years old, but for me, this is seminal. This really kind of broke the field open, and the research being done changed after this study. It was kind of a measly 18 study meta-analysis in 2003 looking at the effects of exercise, physical exercise on cognition. And a couple of things came out which have further been reinforced with new research. The older people are, the more these physical exercise and now cognitive exercise programs help. So I wouldn't do a study for trying to do some of the things we're talking about here on 20-year-olds and expect as big of an effect as we get on 70, 80, and 90-year-olds. So that's something we keep seeing. And the type of exercise matters. And so this was the first study I ever saw where it was really conclusive evidence that aerobic training benefits were independent of strength training benefits. So all of the benefits you get from aerobic training in terms of executive functioning, if you add strength training, you get all of those benefits. They're additive, and both together are better than aerobic alone. And not surprisingly, the longer you do the program, the better the effect size.
Rob, I have a quick input on that last slide, if you don't mind.
Please.
So I thought what was interesting about the Colcom and Kramer research is, Kramer and his colleagues were, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the first ones to really push the cardiovascular fitness hypothesis of brain health, where the reasons people thought exercise improved the brain was because of increased blood flow, which is not untrue. That's definitely one of the mechanisms in BDNF and improving hippocampal volume and therefore memory performance. But what I love is that they did this comparison of a multimodal aerobic plus strength and compared it against aerobic. And one thing that Dr. Adele Diamond, who really is a champion for executive functions, did was actually challenge their research to say not only were they maybe over investing in the value of cardiovascular, but not also including neuromotor exercise as a part of that multimodal equation, including Tai Chi and yoga and things that challenge and train executive functions. And I think if you think it's a fun time, like I think it's a fun time to read those reviews back and forth, basically a academic argument was really interesting. And I think what came out of that was aerobic is valuable, strength is valuable, and neuromotor exercising, including dual tasking, is valuable. And maybe there's different studies that show superiority for different types of functions and executive functions and different types of cognition and different populations and diagnoses. But what's interesting is that we're really learning all of them are valuable and unique in both shared ways. And I think that's important to note.
Yeah, back then they would mostly just talk about the VO2 max benefits of, the aerobic training. And now we know about the brain-derived neurotrophic factors, creating new connections, synaptogenesis, even new neurons, neurogenesis. So they probably are doing different things to the brain, and the benefits of different types of exercise are largely independent, which is further evidence that we need to have all of these programs available to residents and clients. Now, in terms of the resistance training, this was kind of a seminal study in my mind. They did a 1 year intervention. It was about 20 minutes per intervention, either twice a week or once a week. And what they found, doing that for 1 year, 11% improvement in executive functioning for 20 minutes once a week, 13% improvement in executive functioning for twice a week. That's, I think, kind of an important study in terms of how often do we need to do strength training. We get most of the benefits from once a week, get a little more from twice a week. But I hope this is motivating to people that they want to get started, but they haven't done it. If we can just get them in doing this once a week, we see significant improvements. Now, the same lab that did the previous study, after they published that, they asked a different question. How would resistance training affect people who have already been diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment? Now, recognize mild cognitive impairment is a American Psychiatric Association disorder. You can get a diagnosis of this. And it's very close to dementia. About 20% of people with MCI each year go on to develop dementia. 80% of people with mild cognitive impairment will get dementia in the next 4 to 5 years. And so this is a very sensitive point. But check this out. Twice a week resistance training not only stopped that decline on average, they actually had an improvement in attention and memory ability. So while I'd still say we do not have a cure for dementia, we can delay it. And if there's any evidence that shows just how much we can delay it, it's interventions like this, where you have somebody with mild cognitive impairment expected to develop dementia in a fairly short period of time. We can actually improve their executive functioning, change that trajectory. Doing meta-analyses and literature reviews, a conclusion is out there now that people with mild cognitive impairment, that's kind of the sweet spot. That's where we get some of the largest effect sizes from the interventions we're talking about. And there's options, I mean, you can do, exercise classes in the gym with resistance equipment, even with free weights. But you can also do body weight supported exercise. Even just getting up and down out of a chair as many times as you can in a minute is a pretty intensive resistance training activity. We also have the TheraBand materials, weights, and water exercise, aerobic exercises can also be made to have a significant resistance training component. And now that we've kind of shared some of this, I would just encourage you to consider combining strength training with SMARTfit. So SMARTfit has the ability to exercise cognition, and we can actually combine that cognitive training you see that they're doing on the board with the resistance training. And I have a short video of this. The person is just using, like it looks like probably, 16 ounces of water, so a pound of water, but is doing the cognitive activity while they're doing some physical exercise. So turn the volume down just a tad, and we'll watch this really short video. He's looking for the square root of the middle number. Isn't that neat? So you can see the person is doing some pretty intensive cognitive exercise, figuring out those square roots, while it's trying to get as many of those done as possible and adding the weights in. You could imagine, putting that up to 5 pound weights. I think he's probably ready to level up a little bit. It looks like doing that for 5 minutes, doing that for an extended period of time. That is I mean, it's actually kind of tri-modal, right? We have the cognitive training, we have some aerobic like training if we did it long enough, and we have some resistance training. Similarly, yoga in the meta-analyses has been shown to lead to significant improvements in executive functioning. And kind of like we just saw there, I would make the argument that depending on how it's done, yoga is dual tasking. If you're breathing in on one movement and breathing out on another movement, that is cognitive training. You're focusing on giving a lot of attention to your movements relative to your breath while you're simultaneously getting that physical exercise. So we got attention and focus. It might reduce stress. And depending on how you do it, you can get both resistance training and aerobic training from yoga. Similarly with Tai Chi, 20 study meta-analyses, you know where this is going. Combine all the data, and we show that Tai Chi interventions have the potential to lead to significant improvements in executive functioning for older adults. Dancing, similarly, dancing can also be considered a dual tasking activity if you're trying to figure out where you are going and also getting the physical exercise, get the cognitive and the physical. Some people might argue how pure of dual tasking it is because they're not completely discrete tasks there, but we do see significant improvements in executive functioning, spatial ability from dance interventions. And we've seen quite a few of these studies come out recently.
And Rob, I just have a quick point on that. A lot of people think because now we know the benefits of dual tasking, that as we said earlier, just because it's not always dual tasking doesn't mean it's bad. Something can be a complex multitask or a task switch or just cognitively demanding, even if it was just the motor learning associated with learning a dance routine or the spatial, visuospatial memory demands of recalling movements. That is also beneficial, even if it's not a pure dual task. And there's so much research to support that it improves cognition and even executive functioning, even if it's not a dual task, although it has dual tasking components. And another thing I want to address is some of you might be thinking, well, as we review the benefits of these different activities, how is this marketing? And so many of, I hope, who is in the audience is either familiar with these interventions. If you're in a senior living environment, hopefully you're offering one or more of these in your programming. I think the reason this is marketing is because a lot of us don't message how significantly benefit that these activities already are as it relates to a brain health program. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to, I know that there was a couple of comments that I wanted to address there before we move on.
Oh, excellent points. Thank you, Ryan. So, and this is a little bit of what we were kind of getting at earlier. So, the link between exercise and memory, when I first started doing this, some of the best hypotheses was just the VO2 max level. But we now know there are many neurophysiological benefits from physical activity that directly impact brain function. And I kind of like where Ryan was going. It's important for senior living professionals to understand this because that allows them to articulate the tremendous benefit to residents in terms of their quality of life, health span, by talking about this research and connecting it to their programs. I frequently will talk to senior living community residents. And I always like to talk to the life enrichment professionals beforehand, figure out all the things they have, and then I connect that to these benefits. And even when they don't know all of these neurophysiological brain health benefits for the programming they have, they're generally doing it. But we need to articulate those benefits to prospective residents. The other aspect of brain health is social engagement. Social engagement is a form of cognitive stimulation. It buffers against depression and certainly can lead to increases in the meaningfulness and the purposefulness of one's life. We have clear research that loneliness and social isolation are associated with many negative outcomes. And I view this also as a part of brain health. And I think this is a part that needs to be communicated to families and prospective residents that we will, in this community, kind of go on a different trajectory than the rest of society. We see dramatic increases in social isolation, time spent with friends, time spent with family members over the past 20 years. I'm showing you slides from a Surgeon General, U.S. Surgeon General report from 2023, where they shared data showing that lacking social connection is as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Now, that probably doesn't even seem believable, but what they do in these studies, and the citation is down there, they follow large groups of people for decades, and then they figure out who has died and what factors that they had measured predicted death. And of all the factors they measured, lacking social connection predicted premature death better. Now, number two was smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day, but that lacking social interaction was the best predictor. That is also a part of brain health. I would encourage you to talk about your programs that try to bring people together and communicate that in the context of brain health.
And Rob, I think it's such a good point. And when we think of social isolation, I think we all have sort of a stigma or ageist picture of what that looks like, and that it might not apply to us if we're not an older adult that's socially isolated, which I was just looking into some research and I found a meta-analysis on social activities as a cognitive intervention. And I think that's something that we don't talk about enough. We just talk about preventing social isolation, but we don't talk about social interaction as the or part of the intervention. And I think one of the things that's so interesting is a lot of the things that we're talking about with Tai Chi, dance, dual tasking, exergaming, they can and often are inherently social. And while we're very focused on the activities and the cognitive demands, we might be undervaluing the concept of socialization as part of that intervention. So it's so critical, and I hope that we take it more seriously.
Yeah, excellent points. Thank you for amplifying that, Ryan. So here, these are some of the risk factors for loneliness and social isolation. And I think it's important to keep these in mind because kind of in the senior living environment, many of the residents have experienced many of these risk factors. So hopefully people are motivated to start these sorts of programs and get more social engagement and brain health. And we could have another conversation about what to do. But I'll tell you, one of the best interventions that I have seen are affinity groups where people of similar likes and interests, they can come together, get to know each other. But also, as Ryan said, yoga, tai chi, dance, those can be inherently social, as can SmartFit. We can have, a small group of people working together, taking turns on SmartFit and making those connections. I remember one of the first studies that came out of Harvard. Dr. Lisa Berkman found that older adults who are the most socially engaged had the least memory problems. And we think that probably because this was cognitively stimulating, engaging socially. So, kind of, we're going to be wrapping up the brain health portion and getting more into the kind of the marketing discussions here. But good brain health programs need cognitive stimulation that can include lifelong learning programs, aerobic training, resistance training, dual task training, social engagement opportunities. Of course, we need yoga, tai chi, dance. And then some research shows mindfulness training, meditation training can also help. So now we have a good sense of what needs to be in a brain health program. Now we can talk about the benefits of this to the community, including marketing. Now, when we do these presentations, we primarily talk about the individual doing these activities. That is where the benefit lies. But the communities in a senior living setting, they also benefit holistically from these programs, and there is a significant return on investment. An active community attracts active members, and I just can't overstress that. I'm on the board of directors of one of the largest life plan continuing care retirement communities in Oregon, and we see this. If the prospective resident comes in to visit the community, they see people that they want to interact with. They see them alive and engaged. They want to live there. And the community that I help run has invested a lot in that. And now there's a 10-year waiting list, which doesn't even make sense. We have a 10-year waiting list to get in where we have invested in wellness. International Council on Active Aging's Business Case for Wellness white paper shared a lot of data, but they showed that communities with strong wellness programs saw their entrance age drop by 3.5 years. That's what I'm talking about. That is attracting a younger resident. And I won't mean to present this in an ageist way, but in a life plan community where you're going to spend probably the rest of your life in that community aging in place, it makes sense for the communities to want to have younger people move in, make connections, and live their life out. So the wellness communities can do that. And just on average, the resident looks different. They're more educated, higher, and have higher incomes. The other thing, regardless of setting, is we get reduced turnover when we have high quality wellness and brain health programs. So reduced turnover caused when residents move to a higher level of care. We want to reduce that. When somebody moves out of assisted living and moves into memory care, for example, that room in the assisted living, if they have to do any updates, any maintenance on it, it could be out of the system for a month. So that's $6,000 that community hasn't collected. If they would have just invested in their wellness program, they can keep their average resident there longer, reduce turnover, and have higher occupancy rate throughout. So that is the type of place where I don't think people realize the ROI they're missing out on by not fully investing in brain health and wellness. And in this context, I think of my friend and colleague. He's fully retired now. Occasional podcast, Dr. Roger Landry. He was the CEO of Masterpiece Living and a physician. He actually even used to be Chuck Yeager's, who set the sound barrier record, the speed of sound. He was his flight surgeon. And in Dr. Landry's book, Live Long, Die Short, he shows that successful aging is being at 100 or near 100% functioning as long as possible and then going down. Contrast that with the usual aging process is a slow, precipitous decline. These wellness programs can allow us to have successful aging. And what are we calling this now? We're calling this health span, not just lifespan. This recognition that the quality of our senior years is more important than the quantity. And so this area under the curve here, if we can increase that, we have better health span. And it's an interesting name: live long, die short. Now, there's benefits for the communities in addition to the benefits for the residents. In a skilled nursing in a rehab hospital setting, there is a rehospitalization penalty from federal reimbursement. So if your federal 3-day rehospitalization rate is too high, you get a reduced reimbursement rate. Many larger skilled nursing facilities, if they would just invest a little more in their wellness programming, they would have lower rehospitalization penalties, maybe none, getting more reimbursement. So, that's just a nuts and bolts, down in the weeds ROI, but that is possible as well. It's really, I think it's easy to see how these cognitive and physical exercise programs can dramatically reduce rehospitalizations. And I guarantee you, I don't know if we have many occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech therapists on this call, but they love it when their community invests in wellness because it's easier to do that therapy, leading to better outcomes.
And hey, Rob, quick question on the rehospitalizations. Isn't it also true that as people emerge from rehab after a setback, that these types of physical and cognitive activities can help them get back to where they were, or at least help slow decline as the result of that?
Yeah, they're gonna not only do they get back during the therapy period in the skilled nursing, but we kind of prehabilitate them, right? The rehabilitation is so good that they're going to be better in the days, weeks, and months afterwards. So I think there's a short-term and a long-term benefit.
Yeah.
Good stuff. In another study from International Council on Active Aging, they found that implementing a quote unquote aggressive wellness program, please don't ask me to define that, in a 24-bed community with 65% resident participation rate resulted in a yearly revenue increase of $316,000. And that was due simply for extending the length of stay. That's what I'm talking about, is that, if we have people in a community, we want, particularly assisted living or independent living, we want them to stay there as long as possible. That's good for the resident in terms of their health span. It's also good for the senior living community where they don't have the empty beds. And this analysis, they actually pointed out it did not include the additional benefits from reduced fall reduction. That's the other thing we get. And that's a common reason for rehospitalization or hospitalization in the first place is our falls. These types of interventions, particularly the ones that increase executive functioning, particularly the ones that involve dual tasking, can decrease fall rates as well. In addition, we see depression rates are relatively high in assisted living and skilled nursing. And remember what we were just talking about? The meta-analyses show that these types of programs, particularly physical exercise, cognitive exercise, and dual tasking, have all been shown to reduce depression rates in older adults. And so that is another benefit to the community. And I think I'd just go back to the title: success begets success. Residents are going to be more successful if they're not dealing with these mental health challenges. Physical and social engagement programs can lead to decreased depression, but it also improves engagement in activities, creates a more vibrant community, and decreases those moves for more intensive care. So I really enjoy visiting this community. This is Bristol and York Avenue in Manhattan, and their company, they are putting brain gyms in their communities. And in this community, it's a wonderful community. It's one of those, it was assisted living, but even as assisted living, it's one where you're like, this is where I want to live if when I need assisted living. And the gentleman in the photo with me, he leads the SMARTfit program there, and he has a daily sign up, and it is full. That they come in, they interact with him socially. He's able to kind of customize their gaming experience, their dual tasking experience, using the SmartFit console. This is the marketing that I'm talking about. They love to bring prospective residents and family members into their brain health gyms, show off the SmartFit equipment. We're investing in our residents so they can live their best life. Research shows 49% of wellness participants in a continuing care retirement community, and 46% of residents in independent living communities either strongly agree that wellness programming was one of the primary reasons they selected their particular community. Let that sink in a little bit. People are making the decisions as to where they're moving and where they're spending significant amounts of money. They're making those decisions largely on the wellness programming. It's the biggest factor. It's the biggest single factor. We have to invest in it. And then we have to lean into the marketing and tell people the benefits. According to a McKinsey Health Institute study that was cited in one of these ICAA reports, they found that every $1 invested in healthy aging produced as $3 in economic value in the senior living setting. So, I think you all were convinced, but there's the hard data. It's a 3-to-1 return on investment. Don't we wish we all could have a 3-to-1 return on our investments? You can get that by investing in wellness and your residents and your community. The report also talked about some other things we had mentioned: lower healthcare utilization, extended independence, stronger occupancy, stronger length of stay, but also improved workforce morale. One of the biggest challenges in senior living is hiring and retaining the best staff and team members. They want to work in these communities. So we're not just marketing to the prospective residents, we're also marketing to the best staff and team members we want to bring in to these communities. And I'm going to hand it over to Ryan to kind of put this all together in the ecosystem and help us wrap up, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. So I think a lot of us might be thinking, this is great information, but what do we do with it? And I think one thing that we can do with it is kind of observe or self-assess where you or your facility or community or business is at. What sort of things are you offering, and what sort of things did you hear about today that maybe you're not offering, or you used to offer but no longer offer, or you don't offer enough of? And I think the helpfulness of that is that we want to know what the gaps are in our brain health programming. Of course, we know that when we offer more for brain health, it can attract new members, new clients, new business, new residents. And there's this concept of a brain health ecosystem. And the idea behind this ecosystem is that there's a lot of things that we can do for brain health. And what would it look like to address all, if not many of them? Socialization is at the top of this, and we talked about the benefits of socialization as well as the detriments of social isolation. Sensory health, which is something we've talked about in prior webinars, I think by now people are much more aware of the detriments of untreated hearing and vision loss, and even sensory education programming or even sensory training programs that are now becoming better researched and more thought of. Of course, exergaming and dual task training programs, especially when they're part of this quote unquote brain gym type program, are something that we're very keen on. And multimodal exercise programs, like combining aerobic with resistance, offering things like Tai Chi and dance and other mind, body, and neuromotor exercise modalities. lifestyle education and nutrition, not just the education, but also working with the culinary department to help with, maybe delivering a mind diet like menu to those who can benefit from brain health related dietary changes. Health coaching programs are starting to become more common. Specifically, we do a lot of brain health coaching where we're talking about all the preventable factors and lifestyle factors for improving brain health. Also, cognitive rehabilitation and cognitive training programs and cognitive stimulation programs. And I have the pleasure, as does Rob, of talking with so many communities and businesses that are offering at least one of these. But I think all of us could try to find ways of offering more. And I think the reason this is related to marketing is because sometimes the programs you offer are the marketing. I've talked with so many communities that create a brain gym or a brain health program, and just because they offer it, they're starting to attract significantly more business. That, yes, they put it on their website and flyers and things like that, but they also talk about it in community talks or resident talks. They bring in experts. They offer additional or adjunctive programs that are complementary to that offering. And so the reason this is marketing is because people want to seek and feel the value of these types of programs. And brain health as well as fall risk reduction are two of the biggest concerns among older adults, including their families. And also we see the costs associated with dementia and falls. So any programming that can really help address that not only leads to the cost savings that Rob has so wonderfully shared with us, but also attracts people to your programming because they know you're dedicated to actually providing them value. And before I hand it back over to Rob for some Q&A, what I think is interesting is I'm not going to name the community, but I was talking with a very well-known community in one of their locations in Santa Monica, and one of my clients, well-to-do client, lives in the penthouse of this facility and is recently widowed and is so desperate to connect and train her brain. And recently she started coming to my brain gym, the Fit Brain program at Pacific Neuroscience Institute. And we looked at the schedule, and the only thing they offer on the schedule every day at 1 p.m. is bridge. And she tried to go to the bridge class. And it was kind of like a bubble. She couldn't really get in. She didn't really know it. It wasn't a very welcoming environment. But there was no other options for this person. I felt so bad for this woman that there wasn't really, after all the money that she's paying and all the excitement and hunger she has for cognitive and social stimulation, that there wasn't more. And of course, she enjoys SMARTfit and many of the other devices we use, but she also was really lacking many of those social and cognitive stimulation and exercise programs. So we're now working with that community to start offering more of it. And I want us to think about, we all work very hard from our perspectives, but what more can we do for the people we serve along these lines?
That's great, Ryan. I really appreciate those perspectives. And I also think I just want to say a few more words about the marketing. I'm trying to think like somebody that came here for, really wanting the marketing. I have a few more kind of next steps for them. I have seen communities kind of to brand this, and there's lots of ways to brand it. But I think that the brain gym I showed you at Bristol on York Avenue in Manhattan, they are branding that and I would defer to Kathy on this, but I even see their branding on the SmartFit machine. That's a part of what I see them when I see them on social media. I've also seen, I'm working with another large community, maybe 50 senior living communities. And years ago, I helped them create a program. We're redoing it now. It's called Brain Health University. And so that was kind of their branding around it. A lot of lifelong learning, these types of things, education. I've seen another program, they called it their Brain Builders. So that was their marketing that they used. And a couple of next steps to consider if you want to kind of get into this space or you want to lean in and you want to communicate more to your current residents, your prospective residents, is to consider doing brain health educational events where you're talking about this, you're sharing the science. If you don't have somebody, you can contact Ryan or me. We can Zoom in or come visit your community, but you probably have some experts in your area that can talk to about the brain health benefits of the things that you're already doing. And even if you're not able to do that, please consider leaning into kind of lifelong learning programs where you're bringing in speakers, you're providing opportunities for people to learn new things in addition to the physical exercise types of interventions that you already have. I've seen people use these educational events for developing prospective client lists. And then for those that already have a long wait list, this is a way to give back to that wait list to kind of keep them interested in the community by sharing these sorts of updates. So if anybody wants to input a question into the Q&A, Ryan and I and Kathy can do our best to try to answer it.
I think while we're waiting for the next question, the point I would like to make is that so many of our customers are engaging the local media to promote themselves. And there is such a shortage of good brain health stories with the media that they are getting the attention. And the Bristol is one of them. You know, when I was there, they had a reporter from Time Magazine. You know, this is top of the line reporting that opportunities that are available just because brain health is a big deal. And if you can bring in your local media, your local television station, and tell your story, it's just really good for business.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
great point.
Yeah. I think another thing that is worth doing in line with what Rob was saying is inviting clinicians to speak, but also showing and telling clinicians what it is you are doing or want to do. And I think clinicians can be such a great way to drive business and drive awareness, but it's also very inspiring. A lot of people will reach out to them, and if they don't email them back right away, they sort of give up. And I think what's really important is to know that for any kind of outreach, it takes sometimes 3 to 5 times to get through, and sometimes it's worth it. I say you only need 2 really close connections with a clinician as a referral source to really drive the majority of your business, whether that's residential or it's a community-based business or a physical therapy or fitness business. And also to create that value, like Rob was saying, within the community, to bring more exposure to those residents, because a lot of the times people aren't just going to talk to their doctor to learn about brain health. I wish that were the case. It's often not. And so the more we can engage with clinicians and experts, I think the better. I'm not seeing any Q&A, so we either put people to sleep or we answered everyone's questions. Kathy, did you want to come on and share that video, or did you want Rob and I to keep chatting?
I do have just 3 little short stories of customers getting some media attention. One of them
That'd be great.
involves your facility, Ryan. So if
Yeah.
you let me share, I'll bring it forward. Oops. Okay.
Is there media coverage about my facility I wasn't aware of, or?
No, it's the one you do know about.
Oh,
But
okay, gotcha.
yeah, I'll just run this for fun, and you can just see um, how the media is very excited to tell this story. And these are 3 little stories of hundreds we are seeing where facilities are getting out there and telling their story. So here we go. And this is an example of a brain health studio, a destination where people can see that you're giving good attention to brain health.
In March, the Bay County Council on Aging started some new classes to help improve clients' cognitive skills. The classes are part of the council's brain health program they started 2 years ago. As News 13's Jared Sellers tells us, staff members are calling the results, noting nothing short of remarkable.
Around 7 million Americans suffer from Alzheimer's disease. 2,000 of them are in Bay County. The Bay County Council on Aging's brain health program tries to slow down and even reverse memory loss. Clients use something called a SMARTfit board, which helps them remember patterns and test reaction time. Brain health program coordinator Lynn McCrory says the results are mind-boggling.
The statistics show that every person, and that is phenomenal for me to say, because the data shows that every person that has been through the brain health program has significantly improved.
The council is currently conducting its 5th class. At the beginning of the 6-week period, clients are tested. The normal reaction time is around 6 seconds, By the end of the class, the average reaction time drops to just 1 second.
It's really interesting to see that once they play the first round of the games, they're like hooked because they don't even realize that in the perspective that they're actually improving or working toward the improvement of their cognitive and motor skills because they're having so much fun interacting with the system.
In Bay County, Jared Sellers, News 13, Panhandle Strong.
The next class starts in November on the 7th and ends December 14th, but there is a waiting list, so call for more information.
One of the most advanced gyms in LA.
And if you watch carefully, you'll see Ryan here.
But it's one of the only gyms training brains to fight back Alzheimer's.
There he is.
The Fit Brain Gym at St. John's. Everything for the better.
Thanks for sharing that, Kathy. I want to share the value of the marketing value of those squishy stress ball brains are actually immense. As silly as they seem, people love those. And I think what's great is, media coverage can be news level. For our commercial, if you'll call it that, we actually had a person who directed a Nike commercial, so that was very in depth. But the reason that it was done was not necessarily to drive business in terms of clients, but actually drive philanthropic efforts and awareness of what the hospital system is doing that's innovative. And it did that job. And I also love the last video you showed. It doesn't have to be high fidelity, but just showing the residents or the members of the program or the participants, showing the people who run it, the types of activities that are done. And I mean, I'm not someone who makes videos, but just by taking some videos on your iPhone or iPad and using some auto-suggested tools to bring those together, I think is pretty easy to do to show the program. And it really helps tell the story because as excited as we are about dual tasking, when we're just talking about it, it's really hard for people to understand, but showing it is really valuable. So thanks for showing that media.
Sure. Is there anyone who would like to make a contribution? If you have a facility already, you want to say something about how you're succeeding and what, etc.
Well, Kathy, there's a question that I think you could address. Brian's asked, I was thinking of using boxing gloves for the SMARTfit board, and the video footage just reinforced that. I'd love to include such a dual tasking exercise, but can the board take such a beating?
Oh, absolutely. You can use a 20-pound wall ball against it and it'll take it. I wouldn't do that with the low impact portable systems, but the steel systems are designed to be beaten up day in and day out. And we've had systems in athletic facilities for 6-7 years, and we've never seen anything break.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of boxing programs.
I'd like to add that I think what's really important and part of the design, when I got into designing the SmartFit system, what I wanted to do is let the human be the input device for this neuromotor cognitive input that is so important today when we're assigning more and more of the doing to a technology. And this connection between thinking and doing and being in the world and touching the world, proprioception, is another big part of it. We want to touch the world in a big way to know where we are in the world, in space. So the big part of the design of the steel systems was let people go at it. And my most fun moments are when you see a husband and wife couple go at it and just box, or you see people who've just been inhibited. So for so many years, like moms who've taken it from their kids all these years and then just putting those boxing gloves on and letting loose, you wouldn't believe how much fun this can be. It's invigorating and it makes you feel in the world, you know. And maybe in the last minute we can talk about proprioception because I think it's a big deal. So over to you.
Yeah, proprioception is knowing where your body is in the world, and many neurodegenerative diseases associated with aging have proprioceptive deficits. So it's conceivable, I haven't seen the research, but it's conceivable these types of activities could help us maintain that. So it's been a lot of fun sharing these ideas. You know, I think some of you might have thought we were going a different direction at the beginning with brain health, but hopefully you see how brain health and wellness programming can really be one of your best marketing tools.
When customers choose SMARTfit Brain Health Solutions, we consider this the start of a long-term relationship by introducing them to our customer support portal. Here you will find folders designed to support in the following ways: detailed video instructions on the workings of the SMARTfit user interface app. SMARTfit's B2C marketing tools, where we provide you with a host of tools to help you inform your clients of the availability of this new service. This folder provides separate folders for each type of business and population served, as well as marketing tools to build out your website and marketing flyers. The SMARTfit Academy, where you can find an interactive class that teaches you how to use the app in a client environment, as well as recordings of our webinar series, Implementing a Brain Health Program. Access to the game manuals, frequently asked questions, and finally, installation and setup video instructions. We are constantly updating and improving our portal based on requests from our customers. If you are a SMARTfit customer and have ideas on how we can do better, please reach out and share with us. Thank you.
Agreed. If any of you have any questions or you'd like more support, there's so many things that have already been created, from white papers to using some of the published research that's available, PowerPoints we've developed. So we're happy to support you in any way that we can within reason. And please feel free to reach out if we can help.
And we are aggressively building and adding all the tools you will need to tell your communities that SMARTfit has arrived. That includes training, it includes the academy. This course today will be added to the academy. We're building out another academy to come shortly, will be presented by TJ Fairchild. But the marketing tools, even down to artwork and brochures or press releases, all of this is going into those folders, even little videos that you can send out. We just received SMARTfit and this is how it can help you, and come and sign up. That's the kind of stuff we're looking at, because what's important to me is that the relationship really starts when you acquire SMARTfit. It's not about selling you something. It's about partnering with you for your program to go forward and be super successful. I am deeply concerned about the brain health of the world today, and this is my part of doing what I can do to help prevent what I think is a crisis if we don't do anything. So thanks everybody for joining us, and we do look forward to seeing you again in a few weeks when we will cover the power of gamification. There's so much to learn about gamification. I just think it's an understudied area, that there's something that switches on when you get into that game, and we're going to cover that next. So see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.